Welcome to another edition of WRAL Triangle and 2. I'm Mark Bergin. He is Pat Welter. 7:30 Thursday is the premiere of the WRAL documentary Coaching Carolina the Belichick Way. The WRAL documentary unit exposes the power plays, the personal life scrutiny, and the shifting economics that pushed UNC to go all in on football and hire head coach Bill Belichick. I'm joined by Pat Welter. Pat, you are a big feature of this documentary. I want to start the conversation here. We have both watched the documentary in advance of its premiere. What was your biggest takeaway after watching?
Gosh, it's hard to pick just one. I mean, I think it's fair and it's accurate and it captures kind of what this last year has been, which has been a complete whirlwind from the beginning. It's been almost exactly a year since they hired him. And I think the doc does a great job because there's people have a lot of opinions about Belichick before. They have a lot of opinions about after. They had a lot of opinions during this process. And I think this documentary, and it's true to the WRAL brand, tries to paint it for what it really was. And that was the excitement and the uniqueness of the process and the hiring. And then just kind of all the buzz and the hype and the craziness of the offseason from Jordan Hudson to Belichick's media tour and then to the kind of downfall and train wreck that a lot of the regular season was. So I thought it just kind of, having lived it myself, seeing it played back in this dramatic way, and only 30 minutes too, is a great way to experience what I've lived the last year without all maybe the negative side effects and lack of sleep I've gotten through it.
WRAL's Kristen Severance and Dwayne Myers, I thought, did a great job of encapsulating of just all of the different nuggets and layers of this story down into 30 minutes, about as well as you could have. And honestly, I feel like the documentary could be even twice as long if you wanted to go in depth, but limited by the 30 minutes that we have for television purposes. I will say this, what I kind of learned from this documentary about the process of how Belichick was hired was very telling to me in terms of when the vacancy opened up after firing Mac Brown and kind of the gamesmanship within the UNC system itself in athletics director Bubba Cunningham, who we have heard wanted to hire a young up-and-coming college coach, and then what the UNC system wanted to do. And we got to talk to John Pryor about his role in all of this as well. I don't want to spoil the documentary because I would encourage anyone to go watch it when it premieres. You go afterwards, you'll be able to watch it on WRAL.com and on our YouTube page as well. His comments at the very end of the documentary were a bit surprising to me.
The fact that he agreed to do the interview was incredible, right? Because he didn't have to. He easily could have hidden behind, like a lot of the reporting that goes into this kind of thing is anonymous to protect people. And John Pryor, to his credit, has put his name to a lot of this from the beginning. Like, he's always been out front of it. And there was a moment, and I don't want to spoil it, but there's a moment where he kind of gets caught. And he even says to the camera, I got to be careful with what I say here. So that's where I give him a lot of credit for doing it. It's one of the most interesting moments of the doc. One of the most revealing moments of the doc is like, here's the guy that brought him here, and he's wrestling with this and how it goes and where it goes forward. And I think when I look at Pryor and I look at some of the other people that helped bring Belichick here, I don't blame them for taking the swing. I know I had my doubts at the beginning that this would work, and those doubts are only elevated now. I think where you could be critical of the people that helped bring him here is, was there enough due diligence done on Belichick and how locked in he was at this point in his life to really run a college football program with no experience? Because then that's where the rest of the story turns, is there's all this excitement to bring him here and to bring this name that, is going to take UNC football to the next level. But then because he didn't have any college experience and had a degree of arrogance in how he implemented all of his NFL processes, it went the way it did. And now we're left with, can Belichick learn from the mistakes he made year one? Can the money people learn from the mistakes they made, whether that's Lombardi or the donors or now the administration? So can they get this thing back on the right track? Because there's certainly an argument to be made that they should have fired him after this season.
Yeah, so you hear from Pryor in the documentary, and the plan, Pat, for anyone who watches the documentary and wants to see more of Christian Severance's one-on-one conversation with him, the plan is to release that on the WRAL YouTube page to see that full hour-long interview where he sat and answered those questions.
That'd be riveting, yeah.
And to your point, we talked to a lot of people for this documentary. Boomer Esiason, NFL great and football analyst. We talked to the ACC's Wes Durham. We talked to the Athletic Stuart Mandel as well. So you'll get to see Stuart Mandel's full conversation along with Boomer Esiason too. And to your point about Pryor answering our questions, Pat, there were several people who denied our sit-down interview requests. That includes Bill Belichick himself. That includes Michael Lombardi, Lee Roberts, who we'll get to more of these in a second. Bubba Cunningham and Jordan Hudson all denied our requests for interviews specifically for this documentary. Now, I know all of those people outside of Jordan Hudson have had other availabilities when they've been asked some questions, but a lot of times when you're in the availabilities with those said people, you get the opportunity to ask maybe one, maybe two questions, maybe three if you're lucky, and then it's boom on to the next thing because other reporters have responsibilities. So to Pryor's credit, to sit and to answer all of those questions, I thought his commentary and I thought the Athletic Stuart Mandel's commentary to me was most riveting of just providing more transparency of all of the different elements that has been what I'll call a saga of year one of the Bill Belichick era in Chapel Hill.
And look, just like peel back the curtain a little bit for viewers out there, the documentary industry, specifically the sports documentary industry, has exploded in the last few years. But that's also created different types of documentaries, right?
Yes. Let me hop in here too,
go ahead.
Pat, of what you're talking about here, because I think it's very important that this documentary exists in explaining. A big part of it is how Belichick was hired and what that process was like in some of the internal back and forth within UNC. And this is because we're able to do this as journalists, Pat, but this comes on the heels of initially, remember,
yes,
UNC was supposed to be on HBO's Hard Knocks. Well, that fell through. Then Hulu was going to have an in-season documentary about this team. That got scrapped. Belichick was saying, something's still going to come out. I'm going to raise my hand and say I'm very skeptical if that will ever see the light of day. So the fact that we actually have a documentary of how year one went, I think is very telling with when you brought in Bill Belichick and you're paying him $10 million a year. He's the highest paid public employee in the state. A 4-8 season is not what you expected. And I'm not talking about the interest and the fan interest early on in the season. I'm talking about the on-field product when you're bringing in arguably the greatest coach ever. And that is, only one facet of what is a multi-layered saga in what has been this past year of Bill Belichick and Chapel Hill.
And I think the key point is we have all the editorial control.
Yes.
What we lack from maybe access, because if there's a thing that the documentary is potentially lacking, it's a degree of access that you would have gotten with that Hulu doc. But what you give up, where you trade with the access, is giving Belichick, Jordan Hudson, UNC final say, potentially, depending on what you negotiate and what gets aired. I got home the other night. My wife is watching Taylor Swift's documentary, which I'm sure is fascinating, a look inside her process to create her tour. But she's cultivating the image. She's helping choose what you see. And in this documentary, we have no dog in the fight other than trying to paint you the most accurate version of this story that we know from our reporting and understanding. And that's something you're not really going to necessarily get anywhere else.
And to your point, when you watch other documentaries out there on different streaming services, look to see who's listed as an executive producer. And a lot of times it's, okay, y'all have access to be able to talk with this person, but then they have editorial say of, okay, we're going to include these parts of it or this portion of it, and maybe we're going to look past or not include other parts of it. That is not something we would do here at WRAL. It would be to agree to that. And so, again, like you said, Pat, this documentary is just try to tell the story in the way that it's been. I wanted to ask you, whose commentary stuck out to you most and why?
I think for me, this has been a life-changing experience this last year covering this, doing things I would have just dreamed of doing as a reporter, trying to talk to people that I wouldn't expect to talk to me but did, and it just kind of snowballed into what it became. I think for me it was like listening to people like Mandel and others around the country back up a lot of the things that I found. Like publishing the initial report about the dysfunction in the locker room that was sourced through players, parents, agents, people on the staff, the athletic department. It was I want to say a risk, but like I'd never done anything that big in my career. So
and this was in the aftermath of the Clemson game.
After the Clemson game. So then to see people like Mandel and other people in the Doc Boomer Esiason, like these well-respected people within the industry, and even other reports around the country from ESPN and The Athletic back up a lot of things that I reported was, I don't know if humbling is the right word, but just, it was a surreal experience. Like, I've always wanted to make a movie. I love movies. And during that week following the Clemson, I was like, what do I need to make a movie for? I am living in one. Independent of this documentary. And now we have this documentary that captures, because this truly is a movie. Like, this story is something fictionalized writers could never make up. A 73-year-old coach dating a 24-year-old girlfriend, going back to college after winning 6 Super Bowls in the NFL, and then it going spectacularly poorly for at least most of the season. You could not make it up. We knew it would be crazy when he was hired. And we knew it was either going to be, it felt like there'd be no middle, right? Like it would either be a spectacular success, which for that brief fleeting second, it felt like it might be versus TCU, or it was going to be a spectacular failure. And for most of this season, it was. I think, if you want to, you could say, 4-8, they finished strong. But when you finish like they did against NC State, it kind of makes you look at even the 4 wins they had were pretty empty calorie. And you're left hungry here going into his second season with some big questions to be answered going forward.
And I think that's fair considering this was marketed as the 33rd NFL team. This is something that we heard Michael Lombardi say publicly. And a question I have, and I don't want to knock any of the players with NFL aspirations that are going to go to the next level. Like, are we even sure UNC is going to have a player picked in the 2026 NFL draft? This is a question that I have. And this is something like, there's so many different facets to this story because a lot of this too is the money that's involved. And it's not just, okay, Carolina going all in on football. It's trying to keep up with the Joneses of the ACC and the Big Ten of your revenue drivers. And that's primarily football and men's basketball for the vast majority of athletics departments across the country. So I think that's a part of this in trying to modernize with the times and try to get things right for a Carolina program that really has never been able to. And I think that was something else that the documentary does a really good job of explaining, like, other than Lawrence Taylor, when you look at UNC's football history in terms of team success, not individual success, but team success, this is something they've been trying to get right for decades, even generations, Pat.
Yeah, I thought Wes Durham, that's a segment where he really shined. This is a guy that has deep ties to the university, to the area, and he just has that great voice. So to let him kind of tell the story of the history of North Carolina through his father and some of the great old photographs that we found, like even just being in the press box this weekend for high school football state championships at Keenan, you see some of the old posters that marketed the games, and it kind of just takes you back to a different era in football of something that it feels like this state should have a dominant football team, and it just hasn't. There's a lot of reasons why, and Durham, I thought, did a good way of like kind of giving you the history, the context. Like you said, this documentary could have been an hour
easily
if you wanted it to. Like you could have taken like a detour down the Patriots road. Like the amazing thing too is just seeing the work that Kristen did. Like this for me was an easy lift. Like the work I'm doing was in the moment, and Kristen and Dwayne are kind of capturing what we were doing in real time. me, Chris Lee, Brian Murphy, others here at WRAL, because this truly became the whole station at one point was pulling in the same direction to make this stuff happen once everything kind of became a national story. But to see the work that Kristen and Dwayne did as far as like logging almost every newscast that we mentioned Bill Belichick, going through every single game, every single shot basically that I shot at their games. Dwayne coming to games, Dwayne who is I'm not sure what to even give him as a title. He's a magician with the camera. He's an
excellent photographer.
He's a cinematic local news videographer, and just the lengths they went to bring this story to life and make sure that every frame is jam-packed with detail. Like the first 7 minutes, like light your face off. Like your eyebrows get singed because they do such a great job like setting up the story, and then it takes a beat and goes back before it goes forward.
One thing I wish I could ask them if there were any interesting nuggets that they couldn't include in the documentary due to time constraints, but that's where I would encourage people. The extended interviews we have from the people that we've talked to in this documentary, again, Boomer Esiason, Wes Durham, Stuart Mandel, John Pryor, any of those YouTube extras, take the time to watch those because this really is, we've heard a lot about, oh, well, this person had a conversation with this person. It's like, to me, this just kind of lays everything out there for people to see all in one video that's, a little bit less than 30 minutes, Pat.
Yeah, and they did it all in real time, right? Like this isn't a documentary that's looking back, 20 years ago, looking back at something. Like my interview was about an hour long with Kristen, and it was shortly after or a couple weeks after, everything broke. So it was as fresh as it was ever going to be in my mind. And that goes through the whole thing. Like everything is in the moment. Like this is a story without an ending. It's still, it's almost like to be continued in a lot of ways, right? I mean, there's an ending to the film, but the Bill Belichick story is still being written in real time, which I think is also a really cool aspect of this.
So the here and now, 24/7 Sports ranks UNC's 2026 recruiting class is the 17th best in the country in terms of what's next, Pat. I think it's telling. Firing offensive coordinator Freddie Kitchen, special teams coordinator Mike Prefer. You're talking about two of the coaches on UNC's staff that had NFL experience. There are still a lot of questions. Nepotism is one of the questions raised in this film, and you just need to look at the staff of who's who with that. So that's a big part of this too, of where this is heading next. I mentioned this earlier, and I have a prediction of how all this will play out. So I mentioned how Bill Belichick, Michael Lombardi, Lee Roberts, Bubba Cunningham denied sit-down interview requests. There's opportunities to interview them at other times. To my knowledge, to this point, Pat, we haven't seen Jordan Hudson do a one-on-one interview of any sort. There was the CBS Sunday Morning interview that she interrupted, and everything tailspin from there back in April. At some point in time, she's going to sit down with somebody to explain her portion in all of this, because we've seen some of her role through like FOIA requests through the university and what she's doing in some other reporting, part of Pablo Torre's podcast as well, of what her role is in the PR space for Belichick. But to hear her speak and to share her perspective is something that, to my knowledge, we haven't heard to this point. And at some point in time, I do think that will happen.
Jordan Hudson is a piece of the puzzle. And I've always kind of looked at it like the interest in her, I understand, right? It is this very unique set of circumstances. And then that's just the relationship as far as like the age gap and how it came to be. And then when you get the insight into how much of a role it seemed that she actually did have, especially in the offseason, and then UNC kind of pulls that back, at least the public-facing part of it. But I've always said that Jordan Hudson is like the least part of Bill Belichick's problems. I guess the root of it is the judgment, maybe, right? Like the judgment to be in a relationship with a 50-year age gap is, I think you could question on first view. I'm not trying to get in anybody's business, but I think that's fair to do. And then just the fact that he allowed it to become such a distraction was questioning the judgment. Then you look at the staff he assembled. I question that judgment, and then how everything's been run since. So I think when you're looking at a guy here that's 73 years old, and there's just kind of a resume here of decisions that make you scratch your head, and then he gets up on the press conference, Lombardi as well, and they make you feel like you're the crazy one for asking about it. Like, I go back to so many of the press conferences, like there's a moment in the documentary, we've aired it before, where I challenge Bill Belichick, like, hey, you actually believe this process is working? And that was after the Clemson game. And he said, it's worked everywhere I've ever been. Now, in his defense, it did start to turn around. But in some of the ways, it's almost, I don't even know if I want to give Belichick the credit for the turnaround. I want to give it to the players, because they easily could have completely folded. Some of that might be a product of the NIL world we're living in, where it's like, hey, we're playing in a situation that is not good. Well, guys, we got to come together here, because whether we're here for North Carolina or another school next year, we're getting paid. We can get paid. We need to put out good tape. And players like Jordan Shipp, I give a ton of credit for. Like Jordan Shipp like, could be the coach of the team. Like, he was bearing the brunt of so much of the press conference weight, because Belichick would say virtually nothing after wins or losses. And Jordan
the immediate
Shipp's
aftermath of the game. Yeah.
And so they turned the season around, but in a lot of ways, it still feels like I use the term empty calories when you're looking at who they actually beat, how they actually beat them, and how they finished versus NC State. It's not quite the turnaround that Belichick was selling us to believe.
Charlotte, Richmond, Stanford, and Syracuse were the Tar Heels' 4 wins this season, and I look at it from going back to that CBS this Sunday morning interview, Pat. I'm 32 years old. Whenever I've asked a couple, hey, how did you meet? They're usually thrilled to tell you about it. I understand the purpose of that interview was to promote Bill Belichick's book. I just thought it was a little bit strange that when you ask a couple, hey, how did you meet, that you're not more than happy to share that. Most couples I've met in my 32 years on the planet always have like the meet cute story. And so when that didn't happen, and there were reports that CBS didn't even air other portions of her interrupting, that to me is, again, one facet of what is a multi-layered story.
And here we are now, and I'm still talking to people. Like I said, this story is still being written, and we are in real time seeing the transfer portal numbers climb well into the double digits. Now, UNC is a little bit ahead of that because they're not in a bowl game, so they don't have players that are waiting till January to announce their intentions. But I think when you see players like Kamari House, who is one that was mentioned in a lot of our reports for A, getting preferential treatment, to B, having multiple reckless driving charges, and C, was a prized recruit, a guy that came here with Steve Belichick from Washington, was not a guy that was disgruntled because he wasn't playing. Like, Kamari House was the leading tackler on the team, basically started every game that he was healthy for, was essentially allowed to do whatever he wanted without recourse from UNC and this Bill Belichick staff, and he, after the season ends, cannot wait to get into the portal if you look at the way he has posted about it publicly. Now, I've reached out to him, reached out to his agent to try to get a side of their story. They have declined to do so, but I think that is telling. You know, I've had people anonymously tell me about their experiences at UNC and the things that they didn't like, but when you see a player like that go in and seem so unhappy, I think that's telling. But there's two sides of it too, because there's other people that are coming back. I think Jordan Shipp is one of those that's coming back. I talked to another player the other night that didn't play that much this season that is coming back and felt like, basically said to me like, hey, I think we're close and I believe in what we're building. I was on the record with a couple recruits from Rollsville, the Griffin Haynes brothers, who are both coming, stayed true to their commitment. They believe in what they're building. So there is both sides of it. And again, like, we're trying to be fair. We are trying to be accurate. We don't have an axe to grind. We are just trying to get you the truth.
And when I look at 24/7 Sports' 17th best rated recruiting class, Pat, part of that, though, is with the understanding where it will take time for freshman players to come in and develop. They're not going to just dominate college football right away, especially with the prevalence of the transfer portal, players that are accustomed to being in strengthening and conditioning programs for years, not as an 18-year-old kid coming into college for the very first time. So that will take time. And at the same time, that's for Belichick being in his 70s. It's like, how long really can you wait? And so that's what they're going to have to figure out is we've been here a year now, and UNC enters year 2 of Belichick.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said before, there was certainly a strong argument to be made that he should have gotten fired, you could say, during the season, after the season. But there was such a big move to get him here.
It's the money.
There's so much money.
The money is just, and it's not just for Belichick, it's his staff as well. So Belichick's buyout is one thing, Pat. If you were to fire him, the other thing is all the assistants and all of his staff members that would be owed money as well after just a season.
And now 2 of those staff members are gone, the offensive coordinator and Freddie Kitchens. And you look at their offensive stats, which were among the worst, not just in the ACC, but all of college football. That move had to be made. How much fault it is Freddie Kitchens, I think it's the fault of a lot of things, not just him. So bringing in a new person, I don't know, is necessarily going to solve the problem. Mike Prefer, the special teams coach. So football is 3 phases. You have fired 2 of them. The third piece is your own son. And in his defense, the defense was the best unit on the team. So I'm not saying that Steve Belichick should have been fired. But we're looking now where I think next year it's on the table, where next year the heat is on, where like, okay, we gave you a year. You need to show us progress. And you brought in this recruiting class. You're going to bring in a new set of coordinators. You're 73 years old. Like this was never going to be a 20-year thing unless you actually thought that it was going to go so spectacularly well that they handed it down to Steve Belichick. Like that to me is all off the table. This is about next year being really competitive. The schedule is harder. So it's not, to me, completely about the record, but it's about you got to beat the right teams, right? Like Richmond, Syracuse, Stanford, Charlotte, like that's not good enough. You've got a 0-4 or 0-3 versus the in-state rivals, not good enough. Like you got to beat the right teams at the right times as well.
What we're talking about is opening week of the season, the rematch in Dublin against TCU, but then that very first home game at home against ETSU, and I understand that that's not the same as TCU and Chapel Hill on Labor Day night, but this was something the doc captured as well. The spectacle of Michael Jordan and Roy Williams and Lawrence Taylor and Mia Hamm and all these Tar Heels legends being in Chapel Hill for that. Sellout. You could argue Chapel Hill, UNC has never seen that type of experience for any type of sporting event, let alone football. We know how they're a powerhouse in basketball. But to contrast what that home opener against ETSU is going to look like September the 12th, 2026, compared to Labor Day night against TCU in the very first game of the Belichick era, it's just going to be drastically different, Pat. I'll tell you right now.
Well, this is going to be a very different offseason, right? Like short of other stories breaking and new drama, and if some of the things I've heard are true, there certainly could be more drama. I don't know if I'll ever be able to prove or report some of the things that I've heard about what's still going on in Chapel Hill. But that aside, the buzz is gone. Belichick coming into ACC kickoff with a massive entourage and getting to do whatever he wants there, those days are done. Because that was all about the what if. Well, we've seen the what, and the what was not good. So, like, the mystery of, oh my gosh, what's this going to be is no longer there. We've seen it. It's 4-8, and it's one of the worst teams in ACC.
And the peak was that very first scoring drive against TCU, and you could argue that it's been downhill since. You could argue that.
The buzz, the novelty, it's all out the window now. It's strictly about results and results next year. And I'm not saying they have to make the college football playoff for him to get a year 3, but it's got to be like looking at this schedule.
There you go, Pat.
I mean, this is going to be challenging. But if you are able to beat NC State, if you're competitive versus Clemson, if you could pull an upset versus Notre Dame, even if you ultimately only walk away with 7 wins, you had the number 17 recruiting class. you have better offensive results, I will gladly go on podcasts with you and go on TV and give them credit for it.
Yeah.
But so far, there's been so little to give credit for, and it's been interesting going through this process because I've never been under the amount of scrutiny like this in my career. Like, there was a certain stage in the middle of it where just like the hate I was getting on social media, at a certain point, like, it's not even real. Like, they're just bots or people that are just feeding on the clicks that were Belichick. I don't even know if there actually are even real UNC fans. But it was bizarre to experience. But my whole thing the whole time is like, what are you seeing? Like, what do you want? You just want blind praise of this football product? My standpoint is you deserve better. In this state, you're quite literally paying for it. This is the highest paid state employee. This is a university that so many people love, respect, and care for. And that's the thing where I haven't like thrown the people that brought him here under the bus, because they love and care about this university and wanted it to do well. And Belichick, in a lot of ways, it's been his own retirement tour, and it's funding his girlfriend's endeavors. And you talk about the nepotism. So like, they're in a way, they're disrespecting you, the fan. So all I'm trying to do is hold them accountable in some way, and I think that's what everybody who worked on this documentary has done, and I think it does the best way to do it in a fair way as well.
Check out Coaching Carolina, the Belichick Way, 7:30 Thursday on WRAL. If you missed that listing, Fox 50 on Sunday from 6:30 to 7. Also, you can check that out on WRAL.com and the WRAL YouTube page. Pat, if there's anything I've forgotten, the floor is yours. But I'd encourage anyone, go watch the documentary.
Yeah. I think it's great for people that love Belichick. I think it's great for people that hate Belichick. And I think it's going to be great for people that are somewhere in the middle. Like a lot of people are wondering, how you guys are so obsessed with Belichick. The numbers don't lie. The amount of interest that our Belichick reporting and stories have gotten has been through the roof compared to like the baseline of what happens. This is a once in a lifetime thing, and it has happened right here in our own backyard. I don't know if I'll ever get to cover something quite like this again. So to just kind of take a beat, take a sit back, and realize that our lives the last year here have been a movie, and now we have one to reflect it.
He's the one and only Pat Welter. I'm Mark Bergin. This has been another edition of WRL Triangle and 2 on YouTube. Hit the like and subscribe button. Apple and Spotify, if you haven't already. 5 stars, 5 stars only. Again, Coaching Carolina, the Belichick Way, 7:30 Eastern Time, Thursday on WRAL.